How much does it cost to replace the siding on an average size Colorado home? Here are the real numbers. On a typical 2,000 square foot home in Colorado's Front Range, which usually has about 1,600 square feet of actual siding wall area, siding replacement cost is going to run between $23,000 and $36,000 fully installed, depending on the material options. Per square foot of siding, that's roughly $14.50 for vinyl siding, up to about $22.50 per square foot for a more premium product like James Hardie siding, and that includes a ColorPlus factory finish. So the average, and the number that I'm gonna anchor to in this video, is $19.15 per square foot for an average Colorado home. So that's $30,640 total. In this example, I'm assuming we're using the installation of James Hardie fiber cement siding because it's the most common siding option in our area. That assumes the installation of primed siding, meaning it's ready for paint, standard trim profiles and layout, full tear off of the old siding, removal and disposal, house wrap or underlayment, new flashings, the building permit, everything is included. These are not material only prices. This is going to be what you would actually pay as a homeowner with labor included to a contractor who's doing the job correctly. I'm Patrick with WestPro Home Exteriors in Longmont, Colorado, and we are a James Hardie elite siding contractor. I've been in this business for about 15 years, and today I'm going to be walking you through siding replacement costs across 3 major material categories: vinyl siding, engineered wood siding, which is LP SmartSide, and fiber cement siding, which is James Hardie siding, so that you can compare estimates with real data instead of guesses. All right, let's talk siding wall area versus home square footage. This is before we talk materials. You need to understand this because it's where most of the confusion in siding pricing starts. When you say, I have a 2,000 square foot home, that's obviously your living space. That's not how much siding goes on your house. Your actual siding wall area is typically about 80% of your home square footage, and that's on a standard or average 2-story production home. Unless, of course, you have bricks, stone, stucco, or other accent materials that aren't being replaced. A typical 2,000 square foot, 2-story Colorado home has about 1,600 square feet of siding area on average. That's the number your contractor is using for pricing your project. So, when you see siding cost per square foot, like the $19.15 we're using, that's a per square foot of siding wall area, not your home's total square footage. So if you multiply your home size times that value, you're gonna overshoot. Use 80% as a starting estimate if you don't know your exact siding area. Okay, let's talk vinyl siding costs per square foot. Starting at the entry level, we have the category of vinyl siding replacement. On our 2,000 square foot Colorado home example with 1,600 square feet of siding area, vinyl siding runs about $14.50 to $17 per square foot, and that's installed, and that's a total siding replacement cost. So that's roughly $23,200 to $27,200 applied to our average home. So that range covers standard vinyl at the low end up through premium vinyl composites. These are products like All-Side Ascend, which is a co-extruded polymer with better impact resistance, better dimensional stability than a standard PVC vinyl. Premium vinyl can push into the upper end of the vinyl range and actually overlap with something like LP SmartSide pricing. So make sure you know exactly which vinyl product your contractor is quoting. For most homeowners on Colorado's Front Range, occasionally vinyl siding is the right call, but in my professional experience, it's still quite rare. The trade-offs with vinyl are real. Vinyl siding, it just doesn't handle the Colorado hail the way fiber cement siding does. It fades faster under UV exposure, can certainly crack in extreme cold. Most home buyers in the market can tell the difference between vinyl siding and a more premium product. Vinyl's a budget tier material. Generally, if that fits your situation, it works. LP SmartSide siding and the cost per square foot for an average Colorado home. So guys, this is gonna be our middle tier category. This is LP SmartSide engineered wood siding. It is a wood strand composite with treated resin bonded core. Let's apply this to the same Colorado home example, an average Colorado home with LP SmartSide replacement. Costs about $17 to $20 per square foot installed, and and that's for the primed version. That's one that needs field painting. After installation, it comes primed, ready to paint. If you go with LP's pre-finished option, which is the factory applied coating, think about adding roughly $1 to $1.50 per square foot, and that puts you at $18 to $21 per square foot after paint costs. Total siding replacement cost, LP, is gonna be $27,200 to $33,600, depending on the finish. LP SmartSide, it is a solid option. It cuts and handles like real wood, which some crews prefer. It's lighter than fiber cement siding, so it's easier to work with on especially difficult access homes. And it's priced a little bit below James Hardie siding, the trade-off for Colorado homeowners. Is it still a wood-based product? On the front range, we deal with hail, we deal with heavy UV, and importantly, temperature swings from single digits up to 60 degrees in the same week. LP SmartSide is also a newer product in the market compared to a brand name like James Hardie. The 20+ year track record here just isn't as deep. Keep in mind the price gap between LP Smart Siding and James Hardie siding on a typical front range product is roughly $3,000 to $6,000. And whether that gap is worth it to you as a homeowner depends on your timeline and really what matters to you. But it's a gap worth understanding and not just defaulting to the cheaper number. This is gonna be the top of the market, reasonably towards the top of the market for a lap siding in Colorado. James Hardie fiber cement siding, also known as Hardie lap, is a mix of cement. There's some sand mixed in and cellulose fiber. It does not burn, which matters if you're in the foothills, let's say around Boulder, Golden, Estes Park, really anywhere in what we consider the fire zone in Colorado. It also does not rot and handles front range hail better than any other siding product in the categories we're talking about today. On our 2,000 square foot average Colorado home, James Hardie siding with a primed finish, which is what this is, runs about $18.75 to $21.25 per square foot installed, with a total siding replacement cost of $30,000 to $34,000. The anchor number, which is what I use as a baseline for a standard James Hardie siding job on homes this size, is $19.15 per square foot. Again, that's that average home size, and that's $30,640 total for a primed Hardie plank lap siding with a 7-inch exposure, okay? 3.5-inch Hardie trim at the windows and corners. That does include full tear off, disposal, removal of the old siding, house wrap, Z-flashings, the building permit, contractor profit, contractor overhead. Is James Hardie siding worth the extra cost over vinyl or LP SmartSide? So on the front range, for a homeowner who's staying in their house and they're investing in their home, I'd say yes. The durability, hail resistance, fire resistance, and then the resale value do justify that more premium price. Certainly depends on your situation, and that's my answer. James Hardie ColorPlus versus prime siding, okay? If you go with James Hardie ColorPlus technology, which is Hardie's factory applied color finish, so it's pre-painted at the factory, think about adding approximately $1.25 to $1.60 per square foot to that original primed price, okay? So that puts you a total of $20 to $22.50 per square foot, or about $32,000 to $36,000 total on that same average Colorado home. What is the difference between James Hardie primed and ColorPlus? Primed is raw. It ships from the factory with a primer coat and needs to be painted on site after you install it. So it's hung on the walls, installed on the house, and then painted. ColorPlus, on the other hand, is finished in a controlled factory environment with a baked on color coat. Nice advantage to that is you get a 15-year finish warranty directly from James Hardie, and you skip the cost and scheduling of post-install paint jobs. For most Colorado homeowners, in our experience, James Hardie ColorPlus siding can provide a better value. A quality exterior paint job on a 2,000 square foot home runs between $8,000 and $15,000 when it's really done well. So ColorPlus eliminates that first cycle of paint entirely, and on most projects it tends to pay for itself before the prime version would need its first repaint. Where your money goes. So I've given you the total siding replacement cost. Now I'm going to show you exactly where that money goes, because this is what's going to separate a real estimate from a number someone just pulls out of the air. This is the cost breakdown for a James Hardie siding installation on our baseline 2,000 square foot Colorado home with 1,600 square feet of actual siding wall area. We're using primed 8.25 inch, that's 7-inch exposure Hardie plank, and 490 lineal feet of 3.5 inch wide Hardie trim with standard side access, a total of $30,640. Okay, so we're gonna use that example. The siding itself, which is Hardie plank material, installation and labor combined, that's gonna be about $15,626. That's $9.77 per square foot, and it represents 51% of your total project cost. Tear off, labor, dumpster rental, and disposal is $3,983, $2.49 per square foot, and that's 13% of the total. That's removing your existing siding down to the sheathing, which is the bare wood, cleaning up, hauling it all away. Underlayment and flashings, that's gonna be your new house wrap or your Z flashing above every window and door and mounting box. Penetration wrapping, about $3,677. That's $2.30 per square foot and represents 12% of the total project. I want you to remember that number. Underlayment and flashing at 12% is a line item most commonly reduced on low siding bids. And it's the single most common cause of long-term siding failure, significantly below these ranges. This is usually a category where kind of the money disappeared and it's not accounted for in the proper job. Hardie trim, which is the material and labor to install 490 lineal feet, which is an average of 3.5 inch wide trim. That's gonna be installed at windows, doors, and corners. Is $2,451. That's $1.53 applied to square footage, and that represents 8% of the total project cost. Last category is contractor overhead, insurance, and profit. It's gonna come in at $3,983, $2.49 per square foot. That's how that's broken down, and it's 13% of the total project cost. Here's something that's important about that line. It is common in the siding industry for contractors like me to use subcontracted installation crews with little or no workers' compensation coverage. That's one way to shrink a contractor's overhead and cost on a bid, but it does transfer liability to you. If an uninsured installer is injured on your property, that liability can fall on a homeowner. So before you sign any siding contract, just confirm that the crews do have the certificates of insurance for both the company and the installation crew. Material sales tax, $613 for this project. It's about 2%. The permit fee alone is gonna be $300, which is about 1%. That's a total of $30,640, every dollar accounted for. If someone's quoting you the same scope of work for, let's say, $22,000, you can refer to this breakdown and ask yourself, which of these line items are potentially compromised or cut? Because the material doesn't necessarily get cheaper, the dumpster doesn't get cheaper. Something in that bid is either missing or underpriced. And now you have a better idea of just where to look. What drives siding replacement costs up or down? The blog on our website covers 8 specific factors that drive siding replacement costs up or down on average Colorado homes. I've already covered the big ones: material choice and house size. And here are the ones that catch homeowners off guard in our experience. First is tear off complexity. So full removal of your existing siding down to the sheathing, that's the bare wood underneath the siding, is the correct approach. And it costs approximately $2.35 per square foot on a standard single layer of siding removal. Here's the catch. If your home has multiple layers of siding, and many older homes do, we see this regularly on, Old Town Front Range homes, Old Town Arvada, downtown Denver, Old Town Longmont. Each additional layer of removal is going to add about 85 cents on average per square foot to remove. We apply that to a 1,600 square foot siding area on a home. That's an additional $1,360 per additional layer. You won't always know how many layers you have until the work starts. So with moisture protection and flashing as the next factor, I did already show you that house wrap underlayment flashings represents about 12% of total project cost. New house wrap, this stuff right here, and the Z flashing at every window and door, the trim installed over top, and the penetration wrapping. Keep in mind this work is slow and labor intensive. and it is the line item most commonly reduced on low bids. Get that price down. It's also the most common cause of long-term siding failure. If a contractor can't explain specifically how they handle house wrap and flashings, from our perspective, that should concern you. So another factor that's going to affect the total cost is the height of the home and general job site access. So a standard 1-story versus 2-story height actually creates minimal cost difference. And that's because proper pump jack equipment is used where the cost increases is with really difficult access. So that's steep grades, rocky terrain, tight lots, limited staging areas for material and equipment. General difficult site access typically adds 10 to even 20% to labor costs. So easy access suburban homes in Broomfield and Thornton, Westminster, big developments, that tends to run 5 to 10% less in labor versus really difficult access locations. I'll give you a real example of this. We priced out a home outside of Lyons, Colorado, and the backside of the home was built into basically a rocky cliff, and pump jacks couldn't be used on roughly half of the home. The total project cost increased approximately 14% on that particular project due to additional access labor and staging time. Similar situations come up somewhat regularly in Estes Park, Golden, Boulder Foothills, and our projects up in Summit County. So if you know that your home has difficult access, you should expect it to affect your siding replacement cost. Next, let's talk about the idea of hidden costs of a siding replacement project. So 3 that cannot always be determined up front. Additional siding layers is one, which is 85 cents per square foot per layer on average, as I mentioned earlier. The next is sheathing repair. If plywood or OSB behind your siding is rotted or damaged, then replacement runs about $85 to $110 per sheet installed or replaced. You cannot determine sheathing condition without opening the wall, which is why when we do it, our pre-construction core test matters. Last is permits. Most Front Range municipalities require siding permits if you're replacing the siding on your home. Typically, $250 to $600 for the permit fee itself, depending on the jurisdiction. Next is installation techniques. 2 that affect both the cost and the performance. James Hardie siding and LP SmartSide siding are designed to be blind nailed per the manufacturer's specification. Face nailing is faster in some cases, but it's wrong. It voids warranties and creates a moisture entry point at every nail hit. So if your contractor face nails, you're paying for an installation that doesn't meet manufacturer requirements. Rain screen installation, which is an air gap between the house wrap and siding that improves drainage and drying performance. It adds approximately 8 to 15%, certainly more in some cases, to a total project cost. It's definitely not necessary on every Colorado home, but for high moisture environments or driving rain exposure, it is worth discussing with your contractor. And caulking and joint treatment. On fiber cement siding, all cut edges must be back primed and sealed before installation. So rushing caulking at joints, corners, and penetrations is a leading cause of premature siding failure. This is not an optional step. It's a manufacturer requirement. It's certainly time consuming, but it is a component of a proper installation. Let's talk about different siding options and profiles and trim upgrades. So everything that we've talked about and priced so far assumes a standard 7-inch exposure lap siding. That's an 8.25-inch total Hardie plank with a standard reveal, also known as exposure, with what we talked about, the 3.5-inch Hardie trim. Most homeowners assume choosing a different exposure is just a different look or aesthetic. It's not. It changes the math of the entire installation. 4-inch exposure siding uses a 5.25-inch plank that covers significantly less wall area per board. So in practical terms, the material cost per square foot increases roughly 23%, and your installers have to handle 75% more courses of siding to cover the same wall area. Labor efficiency drops significantly there. Typically a 40 to 60% increase in the installed labor time. So what's the result? James Hardie siding at a 4-inch exposure runs about $24.71 per square foot on our baseline average Colorado home. So that's a $39,536 total, and it's an increase of $8,896 or 29%. And that's over that 7-inch standard baseline siding product. Same material, same house, almost $9,000 more because of the exposure change or the reveal change between those two siding options. The board and batten look, which uses Hardie panel with a 2.5-inch batten strip. It adds roughly 13% over our baseline, about $21.71 per square foot installed, or $34,736 total. More trim detail, and there's a moderate labor increase. Nothing like the 4-inch exposure. Hardie shingle. There's a staggered shingle look or a straight edge shingle look. That runs total $34.17 per square foot on average, and that's 78% over that baseline. Almost nobody installs Hardie shingle on their whole house. Typical installation applications are about 150 to 300 square feet for an accent area, such as a gable end, a dormer, or maybe a feature wall. If a siding bid shows 4-inch exposure priced at the same per square foot as standard 7-inch exposure, that contractor either hasn't done the math or isn't sharing it with you. So the trim size matters too. Standard 3.5-inch wide Hardie trim is installed at around $5 per lineal foot. That's the baseline included in our numbers. Moving to a larger 5.5-inch wide Hardie trim, it's gonna be $8.92 per lineal foot installed. So that's adding about 5 to 6% to the total project cost. Roughly $1,900 on our baseline home. 7.25-inch trim is gonna come in around $10.83 per lineal foot. So that's gonna add about 8.4%. So roughly $2,850. And the large 11.25-inch trim, which is kind of a Craftsman look for belly bands, etc., at $15.25 per lineal foot, that's gonna add around $5,000 if we're using that same quantity of trim on the same project. These are real upgrades that change the way your home looks. Know the numbers before you start selecting options, so you're not surprised when the final siding estimate arrives. Siding repair versus siding replacement. How to decide. Not every home needs full siding replacement. Here's how to decide. Siding repair may make sense when the damage is isolated and the rest of the siding system is structurally sound. This is when no moisture has penetrated the wall assembly behind that damaged area. And of course, when the existing siding material can be matched and the repair will responsibly hold. And of course, when resale is not a big near-term factor. Full siding replacement, typically the right call in, we'll call it 5 situations. First, and the strongest indicator, moisture intrusion has been confirmed. Spot repair addresses the surface, obviously, but the wall damage can continue underneath. Second, the existing siding product cannot be reliably repaired. Older engineered wood products like the original LP hardboard and masonite have well-documented failure patterns. If that's what's on your house, repair is often not a long-term solution. Third, you're potentially preparing for resale. Partial repairs on aging siding can raise more questions than they answer for buyers and home inspectors. Fourth is fire protection. For Colorado homeowners in the foothills, such as Boulder, Golden, Fort Collins, Estes Park, etc., replacing combustible siding with non-combustible fiber cement James Hardie siding is a meaningful fire risk reduction. So insurance carriers in high fire risk zones along the Front Range of Colorado are increasingly aware of this distinction. Fifth, and this one has shifted significantly in recent years, the math on repainting a full exterior repaint on a 2,000 square foot Front Range home runs around $8,000 to $15,000, and that needs repainting every 10 to 15 years. So when your aging siding also needs repairs before painting, the combined cost of paint plus repairs often approaches the cost of new fiber cement siding with a factory finish warranty. As paint costs have risen, the return on investment for full replacement has shifted. So replacement increasingly becomes the more economical, long-term decision when you're already facing a paint cycle. A good contractor will recommend repair when repair is the right answer. If every contractor you talk to recommends full replacement on a home where repair is genuinely sufficient, that is worth paying attention to. Let's talk about siding installation failures that cost more than they save. Most siding failures are not material failures. They are installation failures. These are shortcuts made during the installation that don't show up for 3 to 7 years, but they cost far more to repair than the original shortcut saved. So here's what we see when we tear off someone else's siding work sometimes on Front Range Colorado homes. Number one, and the most common, missing or improper Z-flashing at windows and doors. So Z-flashing must be installed above every window and door. When it's missing or installed correctly, water runs directly behind the siding at those penetrations. Over time, you get rotted sheathing, mold, even interior water damage. This is the single most common and most expensive siding failure that we see in our Colorado market. And it's the line item I showed you in the cost breakdown. That's that 12% for underlayment and flashings done properly. And that can get cut on cheap bids. So number two, poor house wrap integration. So the house wrap has to be lapped, taped, and sealed at every penetration. When it's cut too carelessly or left unsealed, it stops functioning as a proper moisture barrier. Moisture moves freely behind the siding and into that wall assembly. Number three is skipped back priming on fiber cement siding. So every cut edge on James Hardie siding, technically all fiber cement siding products, must be sealed before installation. If it's not, the exposed edge absorbs moisture and then it can swell. This is completely invisible on install day. You won't see it until the siding starts failing many years later. Number four, incorrect fastener spacing, and of course what we talked about, face nailing. So James Hardie siding has specific nailing requirements. Too close to the edge, the board can crack. This one's very, very common. Too far apart, the board doesn't seat properly against the wall and can certainly allow moisture behind it. Blind nailing is required per the manufacturer specification. Face nailing can be faster in some situations and convenient, but it can void the warranty and creates a moisture entry point at every nail head. If you see face nails on fiber cement siding where they're using a full-size siding nail, that crew prioritized speed over manufacturer requirements. All right, so number five is a common one. This is improper flashing clearances. So both James Hardie and LT SmartSide specify a minimum clearance between the siding and grade, siding and the roof lines, siding and decking, and of course other surfaces. When those clearances aren't maintained, that bottom course of siding can absorb moisture and deteriorate. This is especially common where siding meets roof lines. We see it frequently, where step flashing is located, and of course at deck ledgers on Colorado homes. Number six is caulking. Caulking that doesn't meet manufacturer specifications. Both manufacturers that we're talking about publish specific caulking requirements. That's what product to use and where it's required. When that caulking is missed at required locations, or it's applied with the wrong product or at the wrong location, that siding system can be compromised at exactly those points. Every penetration, butt joint, and trim intersection must be treated per specification, right? That's either with or without caulking, not at the installer's discretion. Our recommendation is to ask any contractor you're evaluating how they specifically handle each of these. A contractor who answers clearly has actually thought about them. A contractor who can't or who becomes vague should be a concern when asked about those specific details. How to compare siding contractor estimates. You're gonna get multiple siding estimates probably. Here's how to reasonably compare them. First thing, understand that professional siding companies generally present a pretty clean total to understand, not necessarily a hyper detailed line item spreadsheet. That's not necessarily hiding anything. What matters is whether the contractor can clearly answer the right questions and whether those answers are specified and in the contract. Here's a checklist of what to ask before signing. What exactly is included in tear-off? Full removal to sheathing should be standard, but confirm it explicitly. Some bids are priced for installation over existing siding, which of course traps moisture and is a problem. Prevents the sheathing inspection, and it voids most manufacturer warranties in a majority of cases. What house wrap product is being used? And Is it being fully replaced? Confirm that it's a vapor permeable and integrated at all penetrations. How are windows, doors, and penetrations flashed? Z-flashing and penetration flashing should be standard. If the contractor can't describe their process specifically, it does tell you something. Are roof tie-in areas being addressed? Specific flashing corrections are required for a truly proper installation. Are installation crews covered by workers' compensation insurance? You can even request certificates of insurance for both the company and the crew. Explained why this matters during the cost breakdown section. What happens if the dumpster fills up? So some siding contracts pass an additional disposal cost to the homeowner. Confirmed disposal is fully included regardless of how many dump trailers or how many dumpsters are going to be needed for the full siding tear off and disposal. What is the installation or workmanship warranty? And what does it cover? Make sure to get that in writing in your contract. On a standard 2,000 square foot Colorado home, bids or siding estimates from legitimate professional siding contractors can typically vary by $3,000 to even $6,000. If the gap is significantly larger than that, the bids are probably not covering the same scope of work. Now you have an idea of which line items to check, what questions to ask your contractor. So in our experience, this is something that we've learned to do at WestPro that we found most siding contractors don't. Before starting any project, we conduct a pre-construction meeting at our customer's home. That's where we're remeasuring, we're confirming the scope in person, face-to-face, and most importantly, performing a core test. That means we actually drill a small hole in certain walls to examine the sheathing type and condition before any siding is removed. If that core test reveals a potential problem and a major cost increase, we address it in a change order before work begins. That way, people can have a little bit better idea of what to expect before they're fully committed when that siding is all removed. We once discovered, during a core test that an entire home had fiberboard sheathing. So it was not solid sheathing, it was not suitable for James Hardie siding installation. We did disclose it before starting, and we agreed with the customer to actually delay that project until they were ready for that cost. We completed the work when the homeowner was actually ready, which actually saved him thousands by waiting for sheathing costs to normalize. This was during COVID-19. I would ask any contractor you're evaluating how they would handle something like sheathing discoveries, right? And the answer that you get, it's gonna tell you a great deal about how that siding contractor operates. All of these numbers, every chart, every cost breakdown, every pricing table by home size and material are in a detailed siding replacement cost guide on our website, and that link is in the description. Regular siding frequently asked questions. A couple of common siding questions with a couple of quick answers. How much does it cost to re-side a 2,000 square foot home in Colorado? Between $23,000 and $36,000 fully installed in 2026, depending on material. Vinyl siding is at the low end at $14.50 to $17 per square foot. James Hardie ColorPlus siding is at the high end at $20 to $22.50 per square foot. The average using James Hardie primed fiber cement siding is $30,640, $19.15 per square foot of siding wall area with everything included. Is James Hardie siding worth the extra cost over vinyl siding? For most Colorado homeowners, the answer is yes. James Hardie fiber cement siding handles Colorado hail, UV, and temperature extremes better than vinyl siding. It's also non-combustible, which matters in fire zones. And it carries a stronger resale value. So the gap on a typical home is roughly $7,000 to $9,000 over vinyl, and that's real money. But it's a one-time cost versus a material you'll likely need to address again and sooner. Should I repair my siding or replace it? Repair makes sense when the damage is isolated, the system behind it is sound, and no moisture has penetrated the wall assembly. If moisture intrusion is confirmed, or if you're dealing with an older product like LP hardboard or masonite with documented failure patterns, or if the combined cost of repainting plus repairs is approaching the cost of new fiber cement siding with a factory finish, replacement is usually the better long-term decision. What's the difference between James Hardie primed and ColorPlus siding? Primed siding ships with a primer coat and needs field painting after the installation. James Hardie ColorPlus technology is a factory applied finish. It's kiln baked with a 15-year warranty from Hardie. Premium is about $1.25 to $1.60 per square foot. A quality exterior repaint on a front range home costs about $8,000 to $15,000. So ColorPlus eliminates that first cycle entirely and can pay for itself, or primed would need its first repaint. Does homeowners insurance cover siding replacements in Colorado? Hail and wind damage are commonly covered. Of course, subject to your deductible and your policy terms and conditions. Age-related wear or cosmetic deterioration is not. So we recommend documenting storm damage thoroughly before filing a claim. Does new siding increase home value? Siding replacement consistently ranks among the higher ROI exterior remodeling projects. So James Hardie fiber cement siding carries particularly strong resale value because buyers recognize the material and its reduced long-term maintenance burden. Can I install new siding over my existing siding? In most cases, no. Installing over existing siding traps moisture, adds weight to the wall, prevents proper fastening, prevents sheathing and house wrap inspection to address those issues, and can void the manufacturer warranty. So full tear off down to the sheathing is generally the correct approach for a quality siding installation. I'm Patrick with WestPro Home Exteriors in Longmont, Colorado. If this was useful, please subscribe. We're going to be doing the same thing for roofing replacement costs, window replacement costs, and gutter replacement costs. Thank you for watching.